Well, they did it. The Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, which I think is an awesome thing for them to do. So, of course, the idea of abortion is on everyone's mind lately. And somebody brought up the idea that maybe I should do a video on what it means to be pro-life versus pro-choice. So I thought I would do that today and get this out quickly here while this is on everyone's mind. America has become very divided here lately. You can't really ride a middle ground between pro-choice and pro-life. It's just about to the point where you have to take some kind of a side on this. So what does it mean to be on either side? What does it mean to be pro-life or to be pro-choice? And as I thought about this, I realized ultimately it comes down to principle. The pro-life people have a certain principle they live by in this subject, and the pro-choice people also have a principle that they live by, and both of the principles inform the views of the people on that side. So let's look at first at both of them here. First of all, I want to look at what does it mean to be pro-life. To be pro-life, obviously, the practical result of being pro-life is that you think that conceived babies should be allowed to be born. I, of course, am pro-life. So here's the principle that pro-life people operate by. The principle is that life is precious and should only be taken in exchange for another life, if you're going to take it off. So life itself is precious, and the only time it should possibly be taken innocently is when it's in exchange for another life, which in that case obviously wouldn't be innocent. So there's 2 points that pro-life people might disagree on, okay? And you hear this a lot. One is whether abortion should be allowed in the case of the life of the mother. Maybe a mother is getting ready to have a baby, or she's pregnant and her life is in danger. Should the baby's life be allowed to be taken to save her life? And the other one is causes of rape and incest. So let's look at the first one first. First of all, should abortion, if we want to call it that in this case, be allowed in the case where a mother's life is in danger? I don't know of many pro-life people that would argue with that. Most, I think, pro-life people would say that, yeah, it's okay if a mother's life is likely to be lost because it's a life-for-life situation. It might fall under the same category even of self-defense, where many pro-lifers would support it. If someone's about to kill you, you can take their life. So it's a life-for-life situation. Another similar situation might be like for conjoined twins. They're joined together, and if you don't do anything, then they're both going to die. But if you remove one, then there's a chance that one will live, but for sure the other one will die. This is obviously a moral dilemma here, but many pro-lifers would say, but you're trying to save a life here. And so one life may have to be taken to save the other life, because it all comes down to the fundamental principle of life being precious. We're trying to save a life. So that's one of the areas that some people might discuss. Another one is, what about rape and incest? That's one you hear a lot. Well, maybe we should allow abortion in the case of rape and incest. And as a political point, sometimes it might sound kind of good. But when you really think about it, maybe it doesn't sound quite as good as you would think so. Rape and incest. First of all, I don't know why we separate the two, because if it's consensual incest, then there's, you just be allowed to live, right? But it's rape as incest, then it's still rape. So we really only have one category here, which is rape. So this is a situation that's proposed by pro-choice people against pro-life people. Well, maybe we should still, just allow abortion for the case of rape. But I think we need to look at this deeper. We need to understand our principle here as pro-life people. Life is precious and should only be taken in exchange for another life. You'd say, well, wait a minute, it's not fair for a woman who's been raped to have to deal with this child. Well, we obviously don't want to make light of a rape situation, but where in our principle is there a loophole for if something happens that I don't like, that I can remove someone's life? That doesn't make murder okay, which is exactly what abortion is. It's murder. And so it doesn't make it okay because someone was raped. Now, what do you do in this situation? Well, obviously, this is a hairy situation, but if you know who the father is, which obviously you don't all the time, but if you know who the father is, that man, I think, should be completely responsible for the child. Maybe not necessarily raising the child, because obviously he's not a man of character, but he should be financially responsible for taking care of the mother or bringing this child into the adoption process or something. If you don't know who the father is, this obviously makes it a lot tougher, but that's where I would hope the young lady's church and people could come around and assist her through this. You say, well, that's not fair. Well, no, it doesn't seem fair. But again, out of fairness, we don't take another life. Our principle is that life is precious and we don't take that life unless for some reason is in exchange for another life. Okay, so that's pro-life. But what does it mean to be pro-choice? On the other side of it, pro-choice. I don't really like the terminology that's used because pro-choice, well, my first question is always, who gets a choice? I mean, I would think that we should let the baby have a choice too. Maybe the baby would like to have a choice to live. But pro-choice, if we want to find out what this means, we should actually go to some people who who are pro-choice. So I want to look at this website. This is actually on Planned Parenthood. And this is a question that somebody has asked. Can you explain what pro-choice means and what pro-life means? Okay, so here is a definition. Let me highlight this for you of what they have. This their definition is pro-choice. Generally, people who identify as pro-choice believe that everyone has a basic human right to decide when and whether to have children. So they also call it reproductive rights. Okay, so it's up to you when you want to decide you have children. And of course, at first that seems fine. You should be able to choose, right? When you have children. Nobody's forcing anybody to have children. But when you drill down a little bit more, you see some problem. Let's continue on. When you say that you're pro-choice, you're telling people that you believe it's okay for them to have the ability to choose abortion as an option for an unplanned pregnancy, even if you wouldn't choose abortion for yourself. So we've moved now from planning children, so you should be able to plan when you have children, to removing children. And so the pro-choice claim is that any child that is not wanted can be killed. So if two people engage in consensual sex and they know that that can produce a baby, but they don't want the baby and one is produced, they can kill that child. That's what pro-choice means. So at first it says, well, you should decide when you're going to have a baby. Well, yeah, of course. But if you engage in this act knowing that you could become pregnant, you are now responsible. And of course, the issue of rape, we've already talked about that. So again, it comes down to principle. The pro-life principle is that life is precious and can only be taken in exchange for another life. And the pro-choice principle then is this, that we should not be forced to experience the inconvenience of an unwanted child. That's the pro-choice stance. We should not be forced to experience the inconvenience of an unwanted child. So you can see how the whole idea has shifted from the child, from the right of the child to have life, to our own quality of life. If this child gets in the way of my quality of life, then I should be able to eliminate this child. But then, of course, there's a deeper question about, is this embryo, is this child before it's born, especially in the early stages, is this even a life? There's a question about that. So a little bit further here in this article, it says this: people who oppose abortion often call themselves pro-life. However, the only life many of them are concerned with is the life of the fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus. Okay, so in a sense, it's almost like they're saying that they agree that it is a life. But then they go on, they say this, because this is their argument. They are much less concerned about the life of women who have unintended pregnancies or the welfare of children after they're born. In fact, many people who call themselves pro-life support capital punishment, aka the death penalty, and oppose child welfare legislation. So we've already talked about these unintended pregnancies a little bit, but it says you don't care about the welfare of children after they're born. So don't tell me that you can be anti-abortion or pro-life when you don't care about the life of children after they're born. Now, what they're trying to tell us here is that the pro-life position is religious or political. And don't try to tell me that you support life when you're not willing to be the one taking care of these children after they're born. Now, this is really a ridiculous assertion. It's really confusing two things. It's really confusing two ideas here. You know, you cannot stand for life without providing for these children. Those are two totally different categories. For example, let me put it this way. Just because I'm not willing to drive you everywhere you want to go in this world does not mean that I shouldn't tell you that you should not drive drunk. That's dangerous to other people. If I tell you you shouldn't get your car and drive drunk, well, you should say, you can't tell me that unless if you're willing to drive me everywhere I have to go. No, whether I am willing to drive you everywhere or not has no bearing on whether drunk driving is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm telling you, you shouldn't do something that's wrong. Now, many Christians obviously do foster children and they get very involved in helping these children. So it's really a moot point, but that is an argument that's used against us. And it said capital punishment. How can you how can you be of the pro-life position when you support capital punishment? Well, the answer we've already discussed. The answer is in our ultimate principles. The pro-life principle is that life is precious except when given in exchange for another life. So if you support the death penalty, capital punishment, as a pro-life person, it's totally justified because that person is giving their life because they have taken the life of someone else. Again, we are putting emphasis on the preciousness of life, which is our ultimate idea here, but it's why we stand against abortion, why we are pro-life. So this is an issue you can't really ride the fence on. You have to really take one side or the other, especially in today's world when it's such a big deal. What is it going to be? I applaud the Supreme Court for understanding that Roe versus Wade was a very badly designed opinion and for overturning that. Now the states get to decide, and I hope that more states will come through and protect unborn babies. All right, God bless you guys. I may have more on this later. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.